This is the Brave Ideas Podcast, brought to you by Aqua.
Welcome to episode 25 of the Brave Ideas Podcast, the show that is all about bringing to light fresh perspectives from the worlds of digital and marketing. I'm Dan Herman. I'm a digital strategist. I'm a secret sunriser, apparently, and a constitutional expert. And I'm here today with my co-host.
I'm Esther McGeer, Head of Conversation Analytics here at Aqua, and a proud Irish Blue Bulls supporter living very bravely here amongst the Lions in Johannesburg.
Today we are really excited to have Clinton Deavall, Head of Data and Analytics at Aqua, with us on the show. Clint is functioning on 4.5 hours of sleep. He used to have an enormous beard, and he's also really into motorbikes. And today he's going to talk to us about what he knows best, data. So Clint, what's new?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on the show. Well, I suppose the question is, what's not new? This year, the same as last year, we produced more data than we did in the previous year. But what's really interesting is that in the last 2 years, we've produced more data than has ever been produced in the history of the human race.
What are we talking about here? What's data?
Right, so good question, S. I'm sure you've heard something called big data, and big data really refers to what we call the 4 V's in the industry, and that stands for volume, variety, velocity, and veracity. You know, big data can be determined by any of these things, and volume, as you know, it speaks to, I suppose, the main characteristic of big data, and that's the sheer volume of the data being produced. Whereas variety is more around the different types of data. So you can get structured data or unstructured data, and the more different types of those data points you have, the bigger this data grows. Velocity, which is more about the frequency or the rate at which it's being produced, starts to speak to fast data. And then veracity, which is an interesting one, sort of speaks to the trustworthiness of the data. So is the data that we're getting representative of the sources of that data and how it's being produced?
So just 2 things from my side. The first thing is that I feel like I'm in V for Vendetta, where like the dude is like now having all the speech of voila, Vendetta. Look, it's really interesting, but it's still quite technical. So for me, if I'm a layman, I'm thinking to myself, you know, you've established that we're living in a world of massive amounts of data. Where is that data coming from?
To put it simply, there's been an explosion in volumes of data because there's been an explosion in devices, connected devices that are actually producing those data points. There's also been an increase in the number of people that are getting those devices into their hands and producing that data. And as we continue to see more and more people in the world getting connected and more devices and appliances getting connected, so we'll start to see more and more data coming in.
So if I hear what you're saying correctly, you're speaking about the fact that data is really about humans and how they interact with different things, like in this case we're speaking about devices, and at each of those touch points almost a piece that we're calling out from the action that is being taken. And earlier on you touched on the fact that there are different kinds of data at all of those human touch points, the one being a structured data point and the other being unstructured. Perhaps you can also explain to us what those different types of data sources are.
Sure. I'm sure I don't have to explain to you, but for the rest of our listeners...
What about me? I need to explain.
Well, I suppose to get an understanding of what unstructured data is, we first need to come to grips with what structured data is. So structured data is data that fits neatly into a database. So with rules to convey concepts to human beings. So if you try to visualize it, it would look like a chessboard, neatly organized into rows and columns, and those data points would be things that you typically find on, say, a bank statement, like amounts and dates, where we know that an amount or a rand value or a currency value would always only have 2 decimal points. So we can anticipate that all currency data points will fit the same format. And the same for a date. There's a very specific format that we expect a date to come in so that we can actually understand it as a date. When we want to talk about unstructured data, well, that's more like there are no rules. If you try to visualize it, it would look more like a level 5 hoarder's bedroom, where there's just stuff everywhere. There's no inherent order. So a picture or a recording or a tweet are all different types of unstructured data, but they all express ideas or thoughts that are based on human understanding.
Let me just see if I'm understanding what the difference is, because you understand it,
yes,
and I don't quite. Like, I'm going to put it in as simple terms as I can possibly do it. You tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm probably completely wrong. Is structured data that is organized, like on the basis of, say, I fill out a form and it goes into a database and, it's got my name, my address, my phone number, etc., versus unstructured data, which is just like massive amounts of free information that exists on social media or in the social sphere that is disconnected and needs to be reorganized. Is this correct? Or is it too simplistic?
To simplify it even more, structured data would be anything that has a formula to it, or really like a number, right? So numbers, we know, work in a certain way, and you can capture them very simply in a simple database, let's say that, because it's a number and it will always look the same. So if you look at, for instance, web analytics, the structured data that you'd be capturing is the actions people take, which is put into a numerical equations. So for instance, Dan visited a website and clicked 3 times on this page. So from a structured data analytics point of view, we know that we've had 3 clicks on a website, okay? From an unstructured data point of view, it's data that we capture that can't be put into a simple formula, like a number. So the example that Clinton gave was, for instance, tweets.
Yes.
People don't always tweet about a product or a brand in the same way. They use different types of language. And so there's no way we can just put that through a filter and bring out value from it like we would with a number with web analytics. That's the kind of data that really has to be worked to find the value.
Okay,
If that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And I think that it's very interesting to understand the dichotomy. So, but I think that what's really important is to try and work out, like, why should clients care about the difference between structured and unstructured data? What's in it for them, really?
Something that I like to say is data is the new oil. There's inherent value in data. Understanding what your customers are saying about your brand is one way in which you can get value from data. Understanding how to make your products more relevant is another way to get value from data. To bring it even closer to home, if we want to increase response rates or reduce costs per acquisition or conversion, we would start generating some predictive models and give propensity scores to different customers based on their likelihood of taking up a particular offering or a product. I guess the whole point of analytics is to have structured or informed decision making, and the whole point of business is to make money. So if we can reduce costs or minimize wastage, increase response rates and increase revenues, then we're making business sense, and we're using analytics as the tool to do that. And it's all about optimization, really.
I love what you're saying. I mean, I asked the question, but I do know the answer, because there's immense value to data, and we've seen it with a lot of top brands internationally as well as potentially locally. But the 2 examples that stick out are the modern businesses, like the modern new tech companies like Amazon or Netflix, who are very smart in the way they use data to inform, hypothetically, the recommendation engine, or to push products to their customer, or to decide what programs they want to create or commission, in the example of Netflix. I mean, there's immense value to it. And I think it would be really interesting to unpack how you think brands or our clients could actually start to utilize data in their businesses.
Sure. There's no silver bullet here. You don't just decide you're going to switch on big data analytics and start getting value. It's a complex landscape that actually requires a bit of a plan to be able to negotiate. So there is something that we call analysis paralysis in the industry. If you just jumped into analyzing things, you might be lucky and you might stumble across a nugget of insight that you can use to your value. But more often than not, you will end up wheel spinning and running around in circles because you have no clearly defined objective as to why are you actually analyzing this data in the first place. And it's not enough to simply say we want to make money, because there are lots of ways to make money. That translates into a lower level set of questions that starts to speak to, well, how are we going to make this money? What levers do we have at our disposal to start tweaking and pulling in order to optimize our business and start making money? And in order to do that, you've got to be smart.
So what do you mean? Like, what do you mean to be smart?
SMART is actually an acronym, and it's more of an approach or a methodology to making sure that if you set out to do analytics, you're actually going to come out with something that will translate into value. So SMART, the S in SMART stands for strategy. So that speaks for itself. Let's go in with a clear plan, a clear objective in terms of what do we want to come out with at the end of the day? What is the plan here? And then once you understand what the plan is, you can understand, well, what data do you actually need to collect in order to answer questions around how you measure success. When you know what data you need to collect, then you actually start collecting that data, and that's measure. So measuring is, you're configuring, in our instance for web analytics, we'll go and we'll set up Google Tag Manager. We'll make a talk to Google Analytics, and we'll make sure that we're collecting all the clickstream data. Whereas in Esther's department, they'll do their strategy, they'll have their keywords, and then they'll enter those keywords, and the tools that they use, Radian 6 and the likes, will then start collecting that data from different online platforms where those keywords are coming up in conversations. Right after that then is the A, which is the actual analysis part, which is, that's where you've got to decide as an analyst, now I've got all this data, I know what I need to do with it, what are the best tools to use and the best analytical techniques to apply in order to come out with the answers that I need. Once you've done all of the analysis, it's then reporting it back, right? So you've got to then cut that down into a story that you can tell, because if you can't tell a story, you're not really there yet. And you're reporting that back to people who can then take that information and are empowered to use those actionable insights in the form of recommendations and actually transform their business. And that's the T. And that's your full SMART spectrum. And I can see both of you have something to say.
Yeah, so the only thing I've got to say is just to recap what SMART stands for, which is S is for strategy, M is for measure, A is for analyze, R is for reporting, and T is for transform.
Now you know the entire analytics way of working. I want to know from you, Clinton, if you could put it into a practical example for us. What is one of the projects maybe that you've worked on with the clients where you've done the SMART process and you've got a great result, for instance, at the end?
Okay.
That transformation result.
Sure. A good example could be the work that we did on MTN8 a couple of years ago, where the objective was to encourage subscribers to recharge more. The benefit to MTN was that it would increase their recharge revenue. The benefit to the customer is that they are not getting spammed. They're getting content that's relevant for them and that actually adds value to their life. And the way in which this adds value to them is that we took that data with a clear objective of increasing recharge behavior, but we started slicing and dicing that data to get a better understanding of how different pockets of subscribers are actually utilizing that service and giving them targeted messages so that they felt like MTN was actually understanding what their wants and needs really were. If we could do that now, what we would probably do differently is we'd probably start adding a personalization element to that as well. Because then not only do you know, do your customers feel like that you know what their wants and needs are, but they also feel like you know who they are.
I think it's such a beautiful example because at the end of the day, people ask why data? Why data if you're a brand? Because you want to improve your customer experience, because you want to make marketing more enjoyable for them, because you want to understand the content that works for them, and you want to get them to buy your product. but in a way that they feel like it's something that they want to do, not something that's a grudge process or something that's forced to do. And I think that's really a great example of how data was used to improve a customer experience that drove revenue. I think that also my question is that, you referenced earlier how data is exploding, that the volumes of data are massive, that more and more the new social networks that are being created with more and more access to different APIs where you can access different types of networks or different types of data that's coming up. I'm sure that a brand like Snapchat will open an API for big data soon, and that will give it a completely different perspective. Like there's even the discussion around visual data and how big visual data is going to become. So I guess my question to you is, what can we do, or what are you doing, or what is Aqua's approach to future-proofing our clients against this explosion of data? How are we going to help our clients manage?
That's a very good question, Dan. The first thing that we can do is we can start educating them as to the value that mining data and analyzing data has. The next thing would be to educate them on what's actually required in order to make that a realization. And some of the considerations are, these tools that are required in order to mine these vast quantities of data don't come cheap. And the people that are required to use these tools have a very rare set of skills as well, and they don't come cheap. And even if you can get those two things right, if your business is not agile enough to be able to act on those recommendations and those insights timeously, you actually miss the opportunity to capitalize on that insight. And there's no point in having the first two pieces in place. So we as Aqua are already on that journey in terms of educating our customers, and ourselves have invested in the right tools and the right people. I suppose all we need to do is carry on plugging away at educating our customers and trying to succeed at getting our own capabilities up and running. Because make no mistake, it's a complex landscape. So failure is an everyday reality. But the beauty of the world that we live in, and especially in digital, is that we can fail and learn really, really quickly. Yeah. And the only way to succeed is to be brave enough to be okay with failing. And that's something that we do well, is we are brave. That's who we as Aqua are. We are brave, and we work together. I mean, we've got some amazing people in the team that come with a wide range of skills from very diverse backgrounds.
Thank you, Clint. Thank you.
So you put that all together, and you have a really strong capability.
Yeah.
No, for sure. I totally agree with you.
I mean, if I could add to that, the Internet of Things has really, really changed. So now what we're seeing a lot happening amongst our clients is that they really want to tap into the Internet of Things. So really having those consumer touch points and being able to collate data throughout their business. Okay, so from your in-store experience to what you're doing online and what you're purchasing online, etc., to your peer conversations, etc. The Internet of Things really has changed things for our clients in terms of where they would like to go. But then, like you were saying, Dan, there's just data everywhere. And what we're really getting excited about and moving towards is building data, architectures for our clients, so that it becomes about, yes, first we have what we want to achieve, and then from that, here is the architecture. These are the people that will assist you along the way, and this is the end result. What's really become very important for us is, the R in smart, it doesn't end there. SMAR is not a great word. It's like, it doesn't really go anywhere.
It's the best word.
SMAR. So what's happening then is we've got this architecture, we've got the Internet of Things, we're getting customer touch points at every point. It's going through this architecture, we're making sense of it, and we're creating these amazing dashboards, these amazing reports. What's becoming really important for the client now is the transformation bit, and that companies are really having to become, if you want to tap into the Internet of Things and collate data in that way, you're really going to have to become smart about, then, is my business set up for the transformation of things, and also for, like you were saying, for that now transformation. So are we set up enough for immediacy in that?
Thanks, Esther. I'm not sure who's the guest here, but just teasing.
No, but I mean, obviously,
no.
I'm such a massive advocate of the work that Clinton
No, I'm
does.
just teasing you. I'm just teasing you. It's so, Clint, I think it's been an amazing conversation, really interesting. If there was one thing you would take out of this conversation for Aqua and the broader industry, what would it be?
I think to sum it up, Dan, and I've said it before, there's money to be made and there's a lot of value in mining and analyzing data. But if you're going to do it, then do yourself a favor and do it properly. I mean, you can be a cowboy and shoot from the hip and maybe be lucky, or you can be a sniper, know exactly what your objective is and hit what you aim for.
Awesome image.
Dan loves the connotation.
Can we just play Medal of Honor now, please?
So wrapping up this nerd conversation, Clinton, if anyone wants to find out more about our data offering or find out more about your thoughts about where data is going, how these architectures are being drawn up, etc., or they think you just sound really cool and they'd like to get in touch, where can they do that?
They can get in touch with me on Twitter at Clinton Deavall, or they can just shoot me an email at clintond@aquaonline.com.
Thanks, Clint, and thank you for listening to the Brave Ideas podcast. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube, and while you're there, give us a rating and a review.
For more awesome content, please visit the Brave Ideas blog, which you will find at aquaonline.com/Brave Ideas podcast. Also, if you want to get involved in the conversation, and please do, please follow at Aqua Brave Ideas on Twitter or Brave Ideas Podcast on Instagram.
If you want to keep in touch with me, Dan, you can connect with me at Elhermo, ELHERMO, on Twitter, and Elhermo23 on Snapchat and Instagram. And you can get in touch with Esther.
You can email me at estherm@aquaonline.com.
Special thank you to Clinton Deavall, our guest. Thanks to Matthew Klebanski for music and production. Thanks to Johan Buerta and Eras Khoos for the art direction. And to our distribution team, Magesh Ramsamy, Kirsten Wiggle, Hidden Semenes, Sisana Kumalo, and Sabelo Kanyile.
That brings us to the end of the show. We'll leave you with one final thought. There are no original ideas, only original people.